r/AITA mom's DNA test exposed dad's affair, so I destroyed his business. AITA for destroying my dad's business after finding out about his affair. The DNA match notification popped up on mom's phone while we were making breakfast together. Oh, look. Another distant cousin, she said cheerfully, clicking on the profile. Her smile disappeared so fast I thought she was having a stroke. Honey, what's your father's middle name again? Her voice had gone completely flat. Robert. Why? I leaned over to see the screen. A kid who looked exactly like me was staring back from the profile picture. Same dark hair, same stupid crooked smile, same everything. The name read Jake Robert Thompson, and he was listed as a close DNA match. Half-brother level close. Mom's coffee mug hit the kitchen floor and shattered. That was 3 weeks ago, and I'm still finding pieces of ceramic in weird corners of the kitchen. Kind of fitting, since I'm still finding pieces of my destroyed family everywhere I look. The confrontation with Dad was nuclear. Mom had spent 2 weeks quietly investigating, finding bank records for accounts we didn't know existed, discovering a whole second life none of us knew about. When she finally showed him the DNA results and evidence, he didn't even try to deny it. Just sat there in his favorite armchair looking defeated while my world imploded. It wasn't supposed to go on this long, he kept saying, like that made it better. I never meant for this to happen. 15 years. 15 years of lies. This wasn't some drunken mistake at a conference. He had another family. Another son who's 13 now, a kid I've apparently been financially supporting my whole life without knowing it. Every family vacation we couldn't afford, every time Mom clipped coupons and stressed about money while Dad's business expenses ate into our budget, it was all going to support his other life. The worst part? Watching Mom blame herself. This woman who meal prepped his lunches every day, who bragged about him to her book club, who trusted him so completely she never questioned why he worked late 3 nights a week. She keeps apologizing to me, like his betrayal is somehow her fault. I should have known, she whispered last night, clutching the tissues I'd brought her. What kind of wife doesn't know her husband has another child? The kind who trusts the person she married, I wanted to scream. The kind who believed him when he said those mysterious phone calls were work emergencies. Dad moved out last week. He's staying at some extended stay hotel, probably trying to figure out how to juggle his 2 families now that the secret's out. He keeps texting me these pathetic messages about how we can work through this and I'm still your father. But here's the thing that's eating me alive, everyone in town still thinks he's this great guy. His business clients have no idea they're working with someone who's been systematically lying and stealing from his own family for over a decade. He runs a consulting firm that helps small businesses with ethical management practices. The irony is so thick you could choke on it. His reputation is still intact while Mom cries herself to sleep every night. He's still getting invited to Chamber of Commerce meetings while she's too humiliated to show her face at church. People keep asking me how successful businessman John Thompson is doing, and I have to smile and nod while my family falls apart behind closed doors. So I've been thinking. Dad always taught me that actions have consequences. That integrity matters. That you have to stand up for what's right. Maybe it's time I put those lessons to use. Update * things have gotten worse. I found out about Dad's business practices by accident. Mom asked me to grab his laptop from his home office to return it. Apparently he'd been calling nonstop asking for it. When I opened it to make sure it would boot up properly, his email was still logged in. I wasn't snooping, I swear. But then I saw a subject line that made my blood run cold. Invoice adjustment. Keep this between us. Curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back, right? What I found in those emails was worse than I'd imagined. Dad wasn't just a cheating husband, he was a genuinely shitty businessman. There were dozens of messages about overcharging clients, inflating hours, billing for services never provided. One email chain showed him literally coaching a client on how to misrepresent their employee count to avoid paying proper insurance premiums. Another detailed how he helped a restaurant owner hide income from the IRS. The man who grounded me for getting a C+ in ethics class was running elaborate schemes to defraud people. But it gets worse. Remember how I said our family was always struggling financially while Dad claimed business was slow? Turns out business was booming. He was just funneling most of the profits into secret accounts to support his other family. He bought Jake, my half-brother, a fucking car last year. A car. While Mom was working double shifts at the clinic to help pay for my college textbooks. I screenshotted everything. Every email, every invoice, every piece of evidence of his fraud. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely work the keyboard. That's when Jake himself reached out to me on Facebook. Hey, his message read. I know this is weird, but I think we might be brothers. My mom showed me your family's DNA results. Can we talk? Looking at his profile was like staring into a funhouse mirror. Same face, completely different life. This kid had photos from ski trips, fancy birthday parties, a bedroom that looked like it came from a magazine. His mom, Dad's other woman, was gorgeous. Blonde, young-looking, the kind of woman who posts yoga selfies and inspirational quotes about living your best life. Meanwhile, my mom hasn't bought herself new clothes in 2 years. I agreed to video call Jake, and it was surreal. He's a good kid, smart, funny, completely innocent in all this. But hearing him talk about my dad John like Dad belonged to him was a knife to the chest. Jake knew Dad as this generous, successful businessman who never missed his baseball games. He had no idea Dad was missing my graduation because he was probably at Jake's science fair. He always said he traveled a lot for work, Jake explained, his face scrunched up in confusion. Said that's why he couldn't live with us full time. But he visits every week and takes care of everything. My mom says he's the most responsible man she's ever met. Responsible. I almost laughed out loud. The worst part. Jake started crying during our call. Not because he was angry, but because he was worried about me and Mom. This kid I'd never met was showing more empathy for our situation than Dad had during his entire pathetic apology tour. After we hung up, I sat in Dad's office staring at all his awards and certificates. Businessman of the Year 2019. Excellence in Client Relations. Community Leadership Award. All lies. Everything was lies. That's when I made my decision. Dad always said reputation was everything in business. That trust, once broken, was impossible to rebuild. Time to test that theory. I opened a new email account and started drafting messages to Dad's biggest clients. If he wanted to play games with people's lives, I'd show him what real consequences looked like. Update 2 *. I think I made a huge mistake. I chickened out on the emails. After writing like 15 different drafts to Dad's clients, I just couldn't hit send. Every time I tried, I'd hear Jake's voice in my head talking about how Dad supported them, how his mom depended on the business income. If I destroyed Dad's company, I wouldn't just be hurting him. I'd be screwing over an innocent kid and his mother who apparently had no idea Dad was married to someone else. Yeah, you read that right. Jake's mom, Sarah, thought Dad was divorced. I found this out when Jake messaged me again yesterday, completely panicked. Apparently Sarah had been doing her own investigating after learning about me and Mom. She'd been going through old photos and documents, trying to piece together Dad's previous marriage timeline. Except the math wasn't adding up. My mom is freaking out, Jake wrote. She found a photo of you at what looks like Christmas last year, but Dad told her he'd been divorced for 5 years. She's asking all these questions about when your parents split up and I don't know what to tell her. My stomach dropped. I had to be the one to tell this kid that his dad had been lying to literally everyone. That his mom wasn't Dad's girlfriend, she was his mistress. That their entire relationship was built on fraud. The video call with both Jake and Sarah was brutal. Sarah is actually really nice, which somehow made it worse. She's a pediatric nurse who thought she'd found this amazing single dad who was devoted to his son and slowly building a relationship with her. She had no idea she was helping Dad destroy my family. When I showed her photos of Mom and Dad at my high school graduation 6 months ago, very much still married and together, Sarah went completely white. Then she started crying. Then she started getting angry. He told me he was waiting for the right time to introduce me to his extended family, she whispered, staring at the photos. I thought maybe you were his nephew or something. He said his divorce was complicated and his ex-wife had turned his kids against him. Even in his lies, Dad had found a way to make Mom the villain. But here's where things get complicated. Sarah isn't some home-wrecking gold digger. She's a single mom who was working 60-hour weeks when she met Dad. She genuinely believed she was in a relationship with an honest man who was helping her build a better life for her son. Dad had been paying Jake's private school tuition and Sarah's rent, but she thought it was because he loved them, not because he was salving his conscience with stolen family money. I can support my own child, she said fiercely, wiping her eyes. I was doing fine before John came along. I never asked him for anything except honesty. Now I'm dealing with Jake texting me constantly because his mom is talking about moving them across the country to get away from Dad. This kid is about to lose the only father figure he's ever known and get ripped away from his friends and school because of Dad's lies. He keeps asking me what he should do, like I have any fucking answers. Meanwhile, Mom found out I'd been talking to them and completely lost it. Not angry lost it, but breakdown lost it. She's convinced that Jake and Sarah are going to try to take half of everything in the divorce, that I'm being naive, that they're probably working with Dad to manipulate me. You don't understand how cruel people can be when money's involved, she sobbed. They're probably laughing at us behind our backs. But I've seen Sarah's face when she talks about the lies. I've heard Jake cry about his mom not sleeping. They're not our enemies, they're Dad's other victims. The problem is, I still have all that evidence of Dad's business fraud burning a hole in my laptop. And now I'm wondering, if I don't use it, who else is he going to hurt? The decision got made for me when I found out about the Hendersons. I was grabbing coffee downtown when I overheard Mrs. Henderson talking to her friend about their family restaurant. John Thompson assured us this tax strategy was completely legal, she was saying, her voice shaky. But now the IRS is auditing us and we might lose everything. My blood turned to ice. I knew the Hendersons, they'd been running their little diner for 30 years. Mom and I used to go there for pancakes when I was little. They were the kind of people who gave free meals to homeless folks and sponsored the local Little League team. I sat down at the table behind them, pretending to scroll my phone while I listened. The accountant says we owe back taxes plus penalties, nearly $40,000, Mrs. Henderson continued. John told us we could claim our nephew as a full-time employee even though he only works summers. Said it was a family business optimization strategy. Can't you go back to John for help, her friend asked. Mrs. Henderson laughed bitterly. He's not returning our calls. Just disappeared after we paid his fee. I felt sick. This wasn't some massive corporation that could absorb a loss. This was a family business, probably their entire retirement fund on the line. And Dad had just vanished when his shitty advice blew up in their faces. When I got home, I called Jake. Has your dad seemed different lately? I asked, trying to sound casual. Jake was quiet for a moment. Yeah, actually. He missed dinner last night, which never happens. And my mom said he's been asking weird questions about her savings account. My heart sank. What kind of questions? Like, how much she has saved up, whether she'd ever consider moving somewhere cheaper. She thinks he's planning to propose and wants to make sure she's financially comfortable, but... Jake trailed off. But what? It didn't sound romantic when he asked. It sounded worried. I hung up and immediately started going through Dad's emails again. Sure enough, there were frantic messages from multiple clients. The Hendersons weren't alone. A small construction company was facing fines for worker classification issues Dad had advised them on. A boutique was being investigated for sales tax discrepancies he'd helped them hide. Dad wasn't just a cheater and a fraud, he was a coward who left his clients holding the bag when his schemes fell apart. But the email that made my decision was from Dad to someone named Marcus, need to move some assets around quickly. Client situation getting hot and I might need to disappear for a while. Can you help liquidate the emergency fund? He was planning to run. Leave all of us, Mom, me, Sarah, Jake, and all his screwed over clients, to deal with the mess while he started fresh somewhere else. I screenshot that email and finally hit send on those client warnings I drafted. But I didn't stop there. I sent the evidence to the local newspaper's business reporter. To the Better Business Bureau. To the IRS tip line. I even found the email for that Chamber of Commerce that loved giving dad awards and sent them a nice little package of his greatest hits. My hands were steady this time. No more shaking, no more doubt. Then I called Sarah. You need to protect your bank accounts, I told her. Jake's college fund, your savings, everything. Dad's planning to run, and I think he might try to take whatever he can get his hands on. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Sarah. I'm here, she whispered. I can't believe I was so stupid. You weren't stupid. You trusted someone who didn't deserve it. But we can't let him hurt anyone else. By the time I went to bed that night, my phone was buzzing with notifications. The story was already spreading through our small town's gossip network faster than wildfire. Dad's perfect reputation was about to go up in flames. And honestly, I couldn't wait to watch it burn. Update 3 *, the shitstorm hit faster than I expected. I woke up to 17 missed calls and about 50 text messages. The first one I read was from Mom. What did you do? Apparently the local news had run the story as their morning headline, local business consultant under investigation for fraud. They'd used Dad's professional headshot, the one where he's smiling in that confident way that used to make me proud. Now it just looked smug. My phone rang again. This time it was Jake, and he sounded terrified. There are people at our house, he whispered. Mom won't tell me what's happening, but there's a van with cameras outside and she keeps crying. Did you do something? The guilt hit me like a truck. I'd been so focused on stopping Dad that I forgot Jake and Sarah would be caught in a blast radius too. Jake, I'm sorry, Are we going to be okay? His voice cracked. Mom missed work today and she never misses work. People keep calling and she won't answer the phone. Before I could respond, I heard Sarah in the background. Jake, hang up. Now. The line went dead. I tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. Then I tried Sarah's number, also voicemail. They'd blocked me. That's when the reality of what I'd done started sinking in. I hadn't just exposed Dad's lies, I'd painted targets on everyone connected to him. Jake was probably getting stared at in school hallways. Sarah was dealing with reporters calling her a homewrecker. And they couldn't even escape to their house without cameras watching their every move. But it got worse. Mom stormed into my room around noon, clutching her tablet. Look at this, she said, shoving the screen in my face. Look what you've done to our family. It was a Facebook post from someone in town, always knew there was something off about the Thompson family. The wife had to know what was going on. No woman is that clueless. Feel sorry for the kids though, having to live with parents like that. The comments were brutal. People were dissecting our entire family history, speculating about everything from our finances to Mom's character. Someone had posted a photo of our house with a caption, home of the cheater. Another person shared a picture they'd taken of Mom at the grocery store last week, looking exhausted, with a comment, guess the wife finally figured out why they could never afford nice things. They're talking about you too, Mom said quietly, scrolling down. Saying you're either a hero for exposing him or a vindictive brat who destroyed an innocent family for revenge. My stomach churned as I read comment after comment debating whether I was justified or just cruel. Someone had even found my social media accounts and was analyzing my posts for signs of family dysfunction. I didn't think. No, you didn't think, Mom snapped. You didn't think about how this would affect me, or you, or that poor woman and her son. You just wanted to hurt your father. He was stealing from us. He was helping people commit fraud. And now everyone knows our business. Her voice broke. I can't leave the house without people staring. Mrs. Chen from the book club asked me if I knew about the affair deep down and was just in denial. The pharmacist wanted to know if we're going to be able to pay for your dad's prescription since his business is in trouble. She sat down heavily on my bed, suddenly looking older than her 52 years. I wanted him to face consequences too, she whispered. But I wanted it to be private. Divorce court, maybe losing some clients quietly. Not this circus. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from an unknown number. Your dad ruined my family's restaurant. Thank you for exposing him. Then another, you destroyed an innocent woman and child for your own revenge. Hope you're proud. 2 completely opposite reactions to the exact same action. And I had no idea which one was right. The media attention died down after a few days, but the real consequences were just beginning. Dad finally called me directly on Thursday morning. His voice sounded hollow, nothing like the confident businessman I'd grown up admiring. I know you hate me, he said without preamble. And you have every right to. But did you have to drag Sarah and Jake into this? They didn't deserve what you've done to them. What I've done. The audacity was breathtaking. I didn't create this situation, Dad. You did. For 15 years. Jake's getting bullied at school. Kids are calling Sarah a whore at the grocery store. She's talking about changing her name and moving to another state. His voice cracked. You've destroyed innocent people to get back at me. The worst part was that he wasn't entirely wrong. I'd been so focused on justice that I hadn't considered collateral damage. But I wasn't about to let him flip this around. Maybe you should have thought about protecting them before you built their entire lives on lies, I shot back. I'm broke, he said quietly. The business is finished. I've got 3 lawsuits already, more coming. The IRS froze my accounts yesterday. I can't even help Sarah and Jake anymore, which means they're going to lose everything anyway. Something cold settled in my stomach. What do you mean, everything? The house Jake's lived in since he was 5. I've been paying the rent. His school tuition. Me. Sarah's car payment when hers broke down last year. Also me. I know you think I'm a monster, but I was trying to take care of both my families. With Mom's money. Yes, with your mother's money. Which makes me a thief and a liar, but not someone who wanted to see his children suffer. He paused. Sarah's pride won't let her take help now that she knows the truth about our relationship. She's planning to pull Jake out of private school and move them into a one-bedroom apartment across town. My righteous anger started cracking around the edges. I'd wanted Dad to face consequences, not for Jake to lose his home. There's something else, Dad continued. The Hendersons' restaurant. They're not just facing tax penalties. The publicity from your revelations has scared away most of their customers. People don't want to eat at the place that got mixed up in a fraud scandal. They're probably going to have to close. The phone felt heavy in my hand. That's not. I was trying to help them. I know. But good intentions don't pay people's bills. After he hung up, I sat in my room staring at my laptop screen. The local news website had a new article, Family Restaurant Struggles Following Fraud Scandal. There was a photo of the Hendersons standing outside their empty diner, looking exhausted and defeated. Mrs. Henderson was quoted saying, "We trusted the wrong person for advice, and now we're paying the price. We just want people to know we're honest folks who made an honest mistake." But the comments section told a different story. People were speculating about what other, shady, things the restaurant might be hiding. Someone suggested they probably had health code violations too. Another person said they'd always thought the food was overpriced anyway. I tried to save the Hendersons, but instead I'd made them into the town pariahs. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was a photo of our house with a message, "Your family destroyed my dad's construction business. We know where you live." Suddenly, justice felt a lot more complicated than I'd thought it would be. Update 4*, Mom hired a lawyer today. Not for the divorce, for us. Apparently that threatening text wasn't the only one. Someone threw a brick through Mrs. Chen's car window because she defended our family on Facebook. Another person got fired from their job at the hardware store after publicly saying Dad seemed like a nice guy and maybe we should wait for all the facts. The town has completely lost its mind. We're looking at moving, Mom said when she got back from the lawyer's office. She looked exhausted, like she'd aged 5 years in the past week. Maybe staying with your Aunt Linda for a while until this dies down. We can't run away, I protested, but even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. Someone had spray-painted "liar" on our mailbox last night, and this morning I'd found our garbage scattered across the front yard. This isn't running away, it's being smart, Mom replied. The lawyer says things might get worse before they get better. Apparently 3 more businesses are claiming Dad gave them bad advice, and they're all talking about suing us too. Us? We didn't do anything. We benefited from the money he made fraudulently. In the eyes of the law, that makes us potentially liable. She rubbed her temples. We might have to sell the house just to pay for legal fees. That's when it hit me, I hadn't just destroyed Dad's business. I destroyed our entire life. I tried calling Jake again, hoping maybe they'd unblocked me, but the number was disconnected. Sarah had apparently gotten a new phone to avoid the harassment calls. I found their new address through some online sleuthing. I'm not proud of it, and what I discovered made my stomach churn. They'd moved to a tiny apartment in the worst part of town. The kind of place with bars on the windows and broken playground equipment in the courtyard. Jake's Instagram posts, which used to be full of baseball games and hanging out with friends, had just stopped. His last post was from 2 weeks ago. I made a fake social media account and managed to find one of his classmates who was still posting about him. Apparently Jake had been getting into fights at school. Kids were calling him bastard boy and making jokes about his criminal dad. The private school had suggested he transfer mid-semester to avoid disrupting other students. This kid who'd been nothing but kind to me, who'd worried about my mom when he learned the truth, was having his entire life destroyed because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. But then I found out something that made everything 10 times worse. I was scrolling through the local Facebook groups, torturing myself by reading what people were saying about our family, when I saw a post that made my blood freeze. Update on Thompson fraud case, hearing rumors that the son was the whistleblower who exposed everything. Can anyone confirm? If true, that's either really brave or really messed up, depending on your perspective. Someone had figured it out. The comments were already exploding. People were calling me everything from a hero standing up for justice to a vindictive brat who destroyed his own family for attention. But the worst ones were the people trying to analyze my psychology, speculating about whether I was mentally stable or if there was more to the story. Then I saw a comment that made my hands shake. My daughter goes to school with Thompson's kid. Says he's been acting weird lately, really angry and isolated. Hope someone's keeping an eye on him. Kids who destroy their own families like this, sometimes they don't stop there. They thought I was dangerous. People were legitimately worried that I might hurt someone. I slammed my laptop shut and tried to calm down, but my phone immediately started buzzing. Text after text from classmates who'd seen the posts. Dude, is it true you're the one who exposed your dad? Holy shit man, that's savage. Are you okay? People are saying some crazy stuff about you online. The worst part was, I couldn't even deny it anymore. The truth was spreading faster than I could contain it, and soon everyone would know that I'd chosen justice over family loyalty. I just hadn't expected justice to feel so much like destruction. Update 4 continued *. By Friday, reporters were calling the school. I found out when my best friend Marcus cornered me at lunch. Dude, my mom got a call from some journalist asking about your mental state and whether I'd noticed any warning signs, he said, looking freaked out. What the hell is going on? Before I could answer, Principal Davidson appeared beside our table. Thompson, my office. Now. The walk down the hallway felt like a death march. Every conversation stopped as I passed, every pair of eyes following my movement. Someone had apparently printed out screenshots of the Facebook comments and taped them to lockers. I caught glimpses of phrases like family destroyer and psychological evaluation as I walked. Principal Davidson closed her office door and gestured for me to sit. We have a problem, she said without preamble. I've had 6 parents call this morning expressing concern about having you in classes with their children. The school board is asking questions I don't have answers for. I haven't done anything wrong at school, I said, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. That's not the point. The perception is that you've demonstrated concerning judgment. Parents are worried about what someone who would destroy his own family might be capable of. She leaned back in her chair. I need to ask you directly, are you having thoughts of hurting yourself or others? The question hit me like a slap. No. God, no. I was trying to help people. By exposing your father's business practices. He was committing fraud. He was stealing from us and helping other people break the law. The Hendersons were going to lose their restaurant anyway, at least now they know why. Principal Davidson studied me for a long moment. The Hendersons are closing their restaurant tomorrow. Permanently. They can't afford the tax penalties, and the publicity has driven away their customers. She paused. Did you know that when you sent those emails? My stomach dropped. No, I thought I was helping them. And your half-brother? Did you think you were helping him when you exposed his father's lies? I couldn't answer that. We both knew the truth. I'm going to strongly recommend that you and your mother consider homeschooling for the rest of the semester, she continued. This situation has created too much disruption, and frankly, I'm concerned for your safety as much as anyone else's. When I got home, there was a car I didn't recognize in our driveway. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table across from a woman in a business suit who looked like every lawyer from every TV show ever made. Sit down, honey, Mom said, her voice carefully controlled. This is Ms. Rodriguez. She has some questions for you. Ms. Rodriguez opened a folder and pulled out printed copies of emails, my emails. The ones I'd sent to Dad's clients. Did you send these communications? She asked. Yes, but... Are you aware that some of the information contained in these emails was obtained through unauthorized access to private accounts? My mouth went dry. It was my dad's laptop. Mom asked me to return it. But you accessed his email accounts and forwarded confidential client communications to third parties. That could be considered computer fraud and wire fraud, depending on how the prosecutor wants to handle it. The room started spinning. I was trying to stop him from hurting people. That may be your intention, but intention doesn't always matter in criminal law. She pulled out another document. Mr. Hartley's construction company is filing bankruptcy. They're claiming that your emails caused their remaining clients to cancel contracts, pushing them over the edge financially. They're exploring legal action against your family. But Dad gave them illegal advice, which they would have had to prove in court, through proper legal channels. Instead, they're now facing both the original tax issues and the loss of their business reputation due to your intervention. Mom reached over and took my hand. Her fingers were ice cold. There's more, Ms. Rodriguez continued. The district attorney's office has received a complaint requesting they investigate whether you committed any crimes in obtaining and distributing this information. They're also looking into whether you might be charged as an accessory to your father's original fraud, since you benefited from the proceeds. An accessory? My voice cracked. I'm the one who exposed him. After living off the profits for 19 years. The weight of what I'd done, and what it might cost, was finally becoming real. Update 5 *, the criminal investigation is real. Detective Morrison showed up at our door yesterday morning with a warrant to search my electronics. Mom tried to argue with him, saying I was a minor and they needed to wait for our lawyer, but apparently turning 19 last month means I get to be treated like a full adult in the eyes of the law. This is just a formality, he said, bagging my laptop and phone. We're looking into potential computer fraud charges. Unauthorized access to electronic communications, that sort of thing. The irony wasn't lost on me, I was being investigated for the same type of crime Dad had been committing for years. Except his victims were strangers, and mine included myself. After the detective left, Mom and I sat in stunned silence until Ms. Rodriguez called with more bad news. 3 more businesses have come forward claiming damages from the information you released, she said. The total amount they're seeking is approaching $200,000. But they were all doing illegal things. I protested. Maybe. But now it's he said she said, and your father is claiming he never advised anyone to break the law. He's saying his clients misunderstood his recommendations, and that you selectively edited emails to make him look worse. My blood ran cold. He's lying. Prove it. Without the original emails from his server, which his lawyer says were corrupted in a routine system update last week, it's just your word against his. Dad had destroyed the evidence. While I was sitting here feeling guilty about Jake and Sarah, he'd been covering his tracks like the coward he'd always been. But the worst part came when Marcus showed up after school with news that made my stomach drop. Dude, you need to see this, he said, pulling out his phone. Jake's mom posted something. The Facebook post was from Sarah's new account, apparently she'd stopped hiding. Her profile picture was just her and Jake, no mention of Dad anywhere. To everyone asking about my relationship with John Thompson, the post read. Yes, I was involved with a married man. No, I didn't know he was married until his son contacted me 2 weeks ago. I was lied to for 6 years and used as a pawn in his deception. My son and I are victims here, not villains. We're starting over with nothing because I refuse to accept money that was stolen from his real family. Please leave us alone. The comments were brutal. People calling her naive, asking how she could be so stupid, demanding to know if she was going to pay back the money Dad had spent on them. But what killed me were Jake's responses, jumping in to defend his mom. She worked 60 hours a week to support us before John showed up, he'd written under one particularly nasty comment. She doesn't need anyone's money. We're fine on our own. They weren't fine. I could tell from the timestamp that he posted that at 2:30 a.m. on a school night. The kid was probably lying awake stressing about adult problems no 13-year-old should have to handle. I tried messaging him from a new account, but he must have figured out it was me because I got blocked within minutes. Then I got a direct message from Sarah herself. Stop trying to contact my son. You've done enough damage. He was getting therapy to deal with losing his father figure and now he's getting therapy to deal with harassment from strangers who think we're criminals. Leave us alone. She was right. Every time I tried to fix something, I made it worse. That's when Mom found me crying at the kitchen table and delivered the final blow. Your dad called, she said quietly. The FBI is now involved. Something about wire fraud crossing state lines. She sat down across from me. They want to interview you next week. The FBI. Apparently one of the businesses Dad was consulting for his clients in multiple states. When you sent those emails, it became a federal case. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Am I going to prison? I don't know, baby. I honestly don't know. Update 6 asterisk the FBI interview was scheduled for Thursday, but everything went sideways on Monday when I found out what Dad had really been doing with his emergency fund. Ms. Rodriguez called at 7 a.m., which is never a good sign from your lawyer. We have a problem, she said, her usually calm voice tight with stress. Your father's business partner contacted the authorities yesterday. I didn't even know Dad had a business partner. Marcus Chen, Mrs. Chen's nephew, apparently. He's been handling Dad's books for the past 3 years. She paused. He's claiming your father has been running a Ponzi scheme. The words didn't compute at first. A what? He was using money from new clients to pay back old clients, while skimming profits for personal use. Marcus has records showing your father owes over $500,000 to various businesses. Money that doesn't exist anymore. I sat down hard on my bed. How is that my problem? Because some of that money paid for your college tuition. Your car. This house. Her voice got quieter. The government can seize assets purchased with proceeds from criminal activity. We might lose everything. After I hung up, I just sat there staring at my acceptance letter to State University, which was still pinned to my bulletin board. The tuition deposit I'd been so proud to pay early, the dorm room I'd already picked out, the future I'd been planning, all bought with stolen money. Mom came home from her lawyer meeting looking like she'd been hit by a truck. The house is going into foreclosure, she said without preamble. The cars too. They've frozen our bank accounts pending investigation. All of them. Everything. I have $800 in cash and whatever's in my purse. She laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. I called your Aunt Linda. We can stay with her, but her place is tiny. You'd have to sleep on the couch. What about college? Mom's face crumpled. Honey, we can't even afford groceries right now. That's when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Is this the Thompson kid who destroyed his daddy's business? The voice was gravelly, older. This is Bill Hartley. Remember me? My construction company. My blood turned to ice. Mr. Hartley, I. Shut up and listen. I got 47 people who lost their jobs when my business went under. 47 families with no income because you decided to play detective. His voice was getting louder. My daughter's wedding got cancelled because we can't pay for it. My wife's chemotherapy treatments. We can't afford the copays anymore. I didn't know. Course you didn't know. You're 19 years old, you don't know shit about the real world. But you're gonna learn. The line went quiet for a moment. Those FBI agents. They came to see me yesterday. Wanted to know if I thought you were working with your daddy, helping him cover his tracks. My stomach dropped. What did you tell them? Truth. That you're either the dumbest kid in the state, or you're a lot smarter than you're letting on. He chuckled darkly. See, funny thing happened after your little email blast. Your daddy's business partner says a bunch of records went missing right around the same time. Financial documents, client files, backup drives. Almost like someone was cleaning house. I didn't take anything. Maybe. Maybe not. But the feds, they don't like coincidences. Kid exposes daddy's business, then evidence disappears. That's what they call a pattern. After he hung up, I immediately called Ms. Rodriguez. They think I helped Dad destroy evidence. It's possible. The timing does look suspicious from their perspective. Papers rustled in the background. There's something else. The prosecutor assigned to your case is Jennifer Walsh. She's built her career on financial crimes involving families. She believes relatives always know more than they claim. But I'm the one who exposed him. Which could be seen as creating a distraction while the real evidence disappeared. I'm not saying that's what happened, but that's how they might frame it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Interview moved to tomorrow. 9 a.m. Federal Building. Come alone. The FBI wasn't waiting until Thursday anymore. They knew something I didn't, and I was about to find out what. Update 6 continued asterisk the FBI interview lasted 4 hours, and by the end of it, I understood why people confessed to crimes they didn't commit. Agent Walsh was nothing like the friendly investigators you see on TV. She was sharp, cold, and had this way of making every innocent answer sound like a lie. Her partner, Agent Kim, just sat there taking notes and occasionally sliding new documents across the table that made my stomach drop further each time. Let's talk about the timeline, Agent Walsh said, spreading out printed emails like she was dealing cards. You accessed your father's laptop on March 15th. But these financial records show large transfers out of business accounts starting March 10th. 5 days before you supposedly discovered anything. I don't know anything about that. Your father claims you've been asking questions about his work for weeks before the DNA test. Wanting to know about specific clients, asking to use his office computer when yours was broken. She leaned back in her chair. Funny thing is, we checked with your school's IT department. Your laptop was never reported for repairs. My mouth went dry. Dad was setting me up, painting me as some kind of criminal mastermind instead of a stupid kid who'd acted on impulse. He's lying. Is he? Because we also have testimony from a Marcus Chin stating that you asked him about your father's business practices at a family gathering in February. Specifically asking about hypothetical scenarios involving client confidentiality and financial irregularities. I remembered that conversation, but it hadn't been some master plan. Marcus had been talking about studying forensic accounting, and I'd asked random questions because I was bored at another one of Mom's dinner parties. But sitting in this sterile federal building, my innocent curiosity sounded like reconnaissance. Agent Kim slid another document across the table. This is a withdrawal slip from one of your father's business accounts. March 12th. $47,000 in cash. He pointed to a signature line. That's not your father's signature. I squinted at the messy handwriting. It looked like. That could be anyone's signature. Could be. But a handwriting expert might disagree. Agent Walsh smiled, and it wasn't friendly. Especially since we found your fingerprints on several documents in your father's office safe. Of course my fingerprints are there. I've been in that office my whole life. On documents dated the week before you discovered his fraud. She pulled out more papers. Bank statements, client contracts, account information. All handled recently, according to the lab. My head was spinning. Had I touched those papers when I was looking through his files? I couldn't remember. Everything from that week was a blur of anger and shock in trying to process my family falling apart. Here's what I think happened, Agent Walsh continued, her voice conversational now. I think you found out about Daddy's affairs and his business problems weeks before this DNA test convenience. I think you and he cooked up a plan. You'd play the outraged son exposing corruption while he quietly moved money offshore. Classic misdirection. That's insane. Is it? Because your father's been very cooperative since his arrest. Provided us with detailed information about how you approached him with the blackmail scheme. She opened a new folder. Claims you threatened to expose everything unless he cut you in for a percentage. The room felt like it was tilting. He said I blackmailed him. Says you've been angry about the family's financial situation for months. Resentful about not having the same advantages as your wealthier classmates. Says exposing his business was revenge for him refusing to increase your allowance. Every word was calculated to make me sound like a spoiled, vindictive teenager instead of someone who'd stumbled into a nightmare. And the worst part? I could see how they'd reached these conclusions. From the outside, the timeline did look suspicious. My sudden interest in his work, the convenient discovery, the systematic way I'd exposed everything. Agent Kim leaned forward. We know about the offshore accounts, son. Money's been flowing to shell companies in 3 different countries. Your father's already admitted to setting them up, but he claims you provided the account information. I don't even know what a shell company is. Smart kid like you. College-bound, good with computers. Agent Walsh shook her head. I find that hard to believe. By the time they let me go, I was shaking so hard I could barely sign the statement saying I'd cooperated fully with their investigation. The worst part wasn't even the accusations, it was the growing realization that Dad had been planning this for weeks. He hadn't just destroyed our family with his lies. He'd set me up to take the fall for his crimes. And I'd walked right into it. Update 7 * Mom was waiting in the federal building parking lot when I finally stumbled out, and one look at her face told me she already knew how bad it was. Ms. Rodriguez called, she said as we got in the car. The FBI contacted her during your interview. They're recommending criminal charges. I stared out the window as we drove home, watching normal people live their normal lives while my world continued its spectacular collapse. Dad's setting me up, I said finally. He's making it look like I was working with him. I know. Mom's voice was flat. The lawyer says it's a common strategy. Make the family member look complicit so if they flip on you, they're also confessing to their own crimes. But you believe me, right? That I didn't know anything before the DNA test. The pause before she answered lasted too long. I want to believe you, honey. But some of the things they told Ms. Rodriguez. She pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. Did you really ask Marcus Chin about money laundering at his graduation party? Not money laundering. He was talking about his forensic accounting classes and I asked random questions because I was bored. My voice was getting higher. You were there, Mom. You saw me. Was I acting like someone planning a crime? I don't know what someone planning a crime acts like. The words exploded out of her, months of stress finally breaking through. I didn't know what someone having an affair for 15 years acted like either. I can't tell the difference anymore. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything settling between us. There's something else, she said quietly. Mrs. Henderson called this afternoon. The restaurant officially closed today, and they found out they're being investigated too. Apparently the IRS thinks they were actively participating in Dad's schemes, not just victims of bad advice. My stomach clenched. But they weren't. They're good people. Good people who might lose their house because of the penalties. And their lawyer thinks they have grounds to sue us for damages. Mom rubbed her temples. Even if we prove they were victims, we might still be liable for the harm caused by exposing everything the way you did. So I should have just stayed quiet. Let Dad keep stealing from us and destroying other families. I don't know. I don't know what you should have done. Her composure finally cracked completely. All I know is 3 weeks ago we were a normal family with normal problems, and now we're about to be homeless, broke, and possibly criminal defendants. That's when my phone rang with Jake's number, his old number, the one I thought was disconnected. I answered without thinking. Don't hang up, he said immediately. I'm calling because my mom's lawyer says we need to talk. Jake, I'm so sorry. Are you really? Because Sarah thinks you're going to try to blame us for what your dad did. She thinks the FBI is going to say we were part of some conspiracy. My blood turned cold. What are you talking about? Agents came to our apartment yesterday asking about money. Wanting to know if we helped hide your dad's assets or if we knew about bank accounts. His voice was shaking. They showed us pictures of checks he wrote us and asked if we knew the money was stolen. You didn't know. You were kids. Try telling that to the FBI. They kept asking why my mom never questioned where a divorced man got so much money, whether she really believed his stories about his consulting business. Jake's voice got quieter. One of them said 13 was old enough to understand when something didn't make sense. I closed my eyes, feeling sick. Dad hadn't just set me up, he created a web that trapped everyone who trusted him. Jake, you have to know I never meant for this to happen to you guys. I know. But knowing doesn't make it better. We're probably going to have to testify against your dad in court, which means testifying about you too. He paused. My mom wants me to ask you something, and you have to tell the truth. Did you know about us before the DNA test? The question hit like a physical blow. Even Jake was starting to doubt me. No. I swear on my life, I had no idea you existed until that morning. Okay. But he didn't sound entirely convinced. The lawyer says if this goes to trial, we might have to move again. New names, new state. Fresh start. After he hung up, I realized the full scope of what Dad had done. He hadn't just betrayed our family, he'd created a situation where all his victims would end up turning on each other just to survive. And somehow, I'd become the perfect scapegoat for all of it. Update 7 continued. The indictment came down on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a federal marshal who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Are you? He checked his paperwork, the minor child residing at this address. I'm 19, I said automatically, still in my pajamas because who expects the federal government at 7 a.m. Then you're old enough to receive this. He handed me an envelope that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. You have 30 days to respond through counsel. Mom read it over my shoulder, her coffee mug trembling in her hands. Wire fraud, computer fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering. Her voice got smaller with each charge. Honey, some of these carry 20-year sentences. The irony hit me like a sledgehammer. I'd spent weeks trying to expose Dad's crimes, and now I was facing more jail time than he was. His lawyer had apparently worked out some kind of cooperation deal, full disclosure in exchange for reduced charges. Meanwhile, I was being painted as the mastermind who manipulated my poor, weak father into a life of crime. My phone started ringing before I'd even finished reading the charges. News traveled fast in a small town. Dude, Channel 7 is reporting that you got federally indicted, Marcus said, skipping any greeting. Please tell me this is some kind of mistake. I looked out the window and saw the news van already setting up across the street. It's not a mistake. It's just wrong. My mom's freaking out. She thinks the FBI is going to want to interview everyone who was at graduation, asking about what you said to me. Marcus sounded genuinely scared. I told her you just asked random questions about accounting, but she's making me write down everything I remember in case they need a statement. After I hung up, the full weight of how this would spread hit me. Every interaction I'd had over the past few months would be dissected, reanalyzed, turned into evidence of some elaborate conspiracy that existed only in federal prosecutors' imaginations. Ms. Rodriguez called an hour later with more devastating news. They've added additional charges based on your father's latest cooperation session, she said, papers rustling in the background. He's claiming you threatened to expose his affair unless he gave you access to client files for your own blackmail schemes. That's completely insane. Maybe, but he's provided them with what appears to be a recording of you discussing hypothetical scenarios involving client confidentiality. They're analyzing it now. My blood turned to ice as I remembered the conversation. It had been 3 days after the DNA revelation, when I was still processing everything. Dad had found me crying in his office, surrounded by the evidence of his lies, and I'd asked him how he lived with himself. How he slept at night knowing he was stealing from people who trusted him. Whether he thought he'd ever get caught. He'd been recording me. While I was having an emotional breakdown over his betrayal, he'd been gathering evidence to frame me later. There's more, Ms. Rodriguez continued. Sarah and Jake are being offered immunity in exchange for their testimony. The prosecution thinks their cooperation will be crucial in establishing the timeline and your potential knowledge of your father's activities. But they barely know me. They know enough. Jake apparently told investigators about your conversation regarding your father's work schedule and how you seemed curious about his business relationships. She paused. Out of context, innocent questions can sound like intelligence gathering. I thought about that awkward video call when I'd been trying to understand how Dad had managed to live 2 lives. I'd asked Jake about Dad's visits, his routine, whether he'd ever mentioned other clients or business problems. At the time, I was just a confused kid trying to piece together my father's lies. Now those questions were being used as evidence that I'd been conducting surveillance. The doorbell rang, followed by Mom's voice. There's a reporter here asking for a statement about the charges. Through the window, I could see more news vans arriving. Someone had posted our address online, along with my high school yearbook photo and speculation about my psychology. The comments were already calling me everything from a criminal mastermind to a disturbed teenager who'd finally snapped. The truth, that I was just a stupid 19-year-old who'd made an impulsive decision that spiraled out of control, wasn't dramatic enough for anyone. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, saw the news. Dad says thanks for taking the heat off him. Jake. But when I tried to call back, the number was disconnected. Even Jake was starting to turn against me. Update 8 *, the worst part about being federally indicted. You find out who your real friends are, and the list is shorter than you think. My college acceptance got revoked yesterday. Not just State University, all of them. Apparently there's a clause about moral character that covers pending felony charges. The admissions officer was almost apologetic when she called. We understand you maintain your innocence, she said carefully, but the university can't risk the liability of enrolling someone under federal investigation. Perhaps you could reapply after your legal situation is resolved. After. Like there was going to be an after where I wasn't either in prison or completely unemployable. The job I'd lined up for the summer disappeared too. The manager at the bookstore called personally to let me know they were going in a different direction. Translation, they Googled my name and decided they didn't want a potential felon handling their cash register. But the real betrayal came when I tried to log into my bank account and discovered it had been frozen. Not just the family accounts, my personal savings account that I'd been building since I was 16. The account with money I'd earned from my part-time job, birthday gifts from grandparents, every dollar I'd saved for college expenses. Any account holder who may have benefited from criminal proceeds, Ms. Rodriguez explained when I called her screaming. They're taking everything until they can prove which money was legitimate and which came from your father's schemes. I worked for that money. At a job your father helped you get through his business connections. They're arguing that counts as indirect proceeds from criminal activity. Even the fucking ice cream shop where I'd scooped frozen yogurt for 2 summers was apparently tainted by Dad's corruption. The owner, Mrs. Patterson, was a client who'd received tax advice that was now under investigation. My employment there was being framed as part of some elaborate money laundering operation. I'd gone from college-bound honor student to federal defendant without even realizing I was committing crimes. The psychological evaluation was scheduled for Friday. Standard procedure, Ms. Rodriguez assured me, to determine if I was competent to stand trial and assess my risk factors for reoffending. What kind of risk factors? I'd asked. Antisocial behavior, lack of empathy, tendency toward manipulation. She tried to sound casual, but I caught the subtext. They were looking for evidence that I was a sociopath who manipulated my own father into a life of crime. The evaluator, Dr. Reeves, had an office that looked like every psychiatrist's office in every movie ever made. Diplomas on the walls, leather furniture, a box of tissues positioned strategically where patients could reach them during breakdowns. Tell me about your relationship with your father, she began, pen poised over her notepad. Which version? The one I grew up with, or the criminal who's been setting me up to take the fall for his crimes? She made a note. Probably something about deflection and blame externalization. The prosecutors believe you discovered your father's activities months before the DNA test incident. What's your response to that? My response is that prosecutors believe whatever story gets them the most impressive conviction for their careers. Another note. This one longer. For 45 minutes, she asked questions designed to make normal teenage behavior sound pathological. Had I ever felt angry at my parents? Yes, who hasn't? Had I ever lied to avoid getting in trouble? Obviously. Had I ever fantasized about revenge when someone wronged me? I'm human, not a saint. Every honest answer was apparently evidence of concerning behavioral patterns and potential antisocial traits. The worst question came at the end. If you could go back to that morning when you found the DNA results, would you handle things differently? I thought about Jake losing his home, the Hendersons closing their restaurant, Mom crying herself to sleep every night, my own future disappearing into a black hole of legal fees and federal prosecution. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe I should have just kept quiet and let him keep destroying people. Dr. Reeves looked up sharply. You see your father's victims as your responsibility? I see everyone as my responsibility now. Every person who got hurt because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. She wrote for a long time after that. When I got home, there was a process server waiting with more bad news. The Hendersons were officially suing our family for damages. $200,000 for lost business, emotional distress, and malicious interference with contractual relationships. People I tried to help were now trying to destroy me too. Update 8 continued, final update *, the trial never happened. 2 days before jury selection was supposed to begin, everything unraveled in the most unexpected way possible. I was sitting in Ms. Rodriguez's office, going over my testimony for the 100th time, when her phone rang with news that changed everything. That was Agent Kim, she said, hanging up with a stunned expression. Your father's business partner just came forward with evidence that clears you completely. Marcus Chen, Mrs. Chen's nephew, the forensic accounting student who'd been helping Dad with the books, had been conducting his own investigation for months. While federal prosecutors were building their case against me, he'd been quietly documenting every transaction, every forged signature, every falsified record. Your father was planning this frame job from the moment you discovered the DNA results, Ms. Rodriguez explained, spreading out Marcus's evidence across her desk. He knew his schemes were about to collapse anyway. The IRS was already investigating several of his clients. When you exposed him, he saw an opportunity to make you the scapegoat. The documents told the real story. Dad had been transferring money to offshore accounts for over a year, long before I knew anything was wrong. The signature on that withdrawal slip. A forgery he'd practiced using samples of my handwriting from old school forms. The recording of me discussing blackmail. Heavily edited snippets of our conversation taken completely out of context. Marcus has security footage from his own home showing your father asking him to backdate financial records and delete electronic files, she continued. Your father thought he was getting help covering his tracks, but Marcus was actually documenting everything for his senior thesis on financial fraud. The irony was perfect. Dad had been so arrogant, so certain that a college student wouldn't understand what he was really asking for, that he confessed to his crimes while the kid was literally recording him for an academic project on forensic accounting. Within hours, all charges against me were dropped. Dad's cooperation deal evaporated, and he was facing the full weight of federal prosecution without anyone to share the blame. The FBI formally apologized for the investigative errors that had led to my indictment, though their apology couldn't undo months of public humiliation and legal fees. The civil lawsuits took longer to resolve, but Marcus's evidence helped there too. The Hendersons' case against us was dismissed when it became clear that Dad alone was responsible for the fraudulent advice. Several other businesses dropped their claims once they realized we were victims too, not co-conspirators. Jake called me the day the charges were dropped, his voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry I doubted you, he said. Sarah wants to apologize too, but she's too embarrassed about some of the things she said to the FBI. You guys were just trying to protect yourselves. I get it. We're doing okay now, he said. Mom got a better job at the children's hospital, and I'm back at my old school. Different last name, but same friends. He paused. Maybe we could meet up sometime. Like, as actual brothers instead of just DNA matches. Mom and I did lose the house, that part was real, since it had been purchased with stolen money. But Aunt Linda helped us get a small apartment across town, and Mom's finally smiling again. She's talking about going back to school herself, maybe getting that nursing degree she put on hold when she married Dad. As for Dad, he got 12 years in federal prison. No cooperation deal, no reduced sentence, no sympathy from the judge who called his attempt to frame his own son particularly despicable, even by white-collar criminal standards. I start community college in the fall. It's not the 4-year university experience I'd planned, but it's a start. And sometimes starting over isn't the worst thing that can happen to a family. Sometimes it's exactly what we needed. AITA. I still don't know. But I'm finally okay with the uncertainty, ***.